I'll introduce Mike. Sure. So the recycling issue, if you're working in a municipality or active in your town, you've undoubtedly heard of costs going up, in some cases out of control. So what we thought we would do is try to bring you some information on that, and that brought us to the Northeast Resource Recovery Association, and Mike Dufor being the expert in the region to explain to us why recycling costs are going up, and what, if anything, we can do at the regional level to try and either control that, offset that, or is it possible to reverse at this point, Mike? I guess we'll find out. But Mike Dufor with Northeast Recovery will fill us in. Thanks.
It's always good to follow a real depressing picture of we haven't got any money. It's wonderful. The last time I gave this presentation, at the end, everyone was saying, "Can you tell us anything good?" How many here have heard about the China sword? Yep. How many think it's all China's fault? Two different things have happened. There's three parts to what I'm going to do, and I'm trying to just give some context. I don't have a magic wand. I don't have a silver bullet. I haven't got a solution that's going to work. The organization works every day, and we spent a good 10-hour day today trying to see if we can't make it better one step at a time. But at the same time, it's important to understand how we got to where we are today and hopefully find some solutions for it. So that's what we're trying to do. Try and explain what happened in the geopolitical globe that caused this to have the impact it has, what's been the impact domestically, and hopefully what are some of the possible solutions. That's what we're looking at. If this works, yep. This was back in October of 17, so about a year and a half ago. There was a national call by the Recycling Partnership, and it was a call in like a lot of conference calls. The difference in this one is it was reacting to the notification that China had made to the World Trade Organization, we're not taking crap anymore. That's the short version. It was about 17 to 24 different items that they said, we will not accept these coming into our ports. So they had a conference call, like so many conference calls you're on. The difference was that there were over 500 people on this call. And they were all in the industry, they were all in the recycling business or the waste business, because they figured out that this was going to be a huge change. They didn't know exactly what the impact was going to be yet, but they knew it was going to be severe. So what they had to do is they had to have several more calls and expand their ability to take people onto the calls. This was done by Dylan Thomas. He actually took the time to turn the Great Wall of China green because that was their first attempt to get our attention back in 2013. And what they said in their green fence policy in 2013 was, we really don't like contamination. We're happy to buy plastic, we're happy to buy cardboard and mixed paper, aluminum cans, that kind of thing, but we don't want a lot of garbage in the middle of it. So they would start an inspection process back then. These are the shipping containers from Long Beach, California. I actually happened to get right on top of these to take the picture. Long Beach is shipping back empty containers. China ships us a flat screen TV, and we take it home, we put it on the wall, and then we take the cardboard, the plastic, and the styrofoam back to our transfer station or to the recycling. Your problem over here. But the containers that those flat screens came over got to go back empty. Or they give you a really good price to take your recycling back with them. And they fold that into it so that they were paying, prior to the Olympics in 2008, they were paying something like $300 a ton for cardboard. $300 a ton. Nobody in the domestic market could meet that. Currently today, I think it's about 89 to 125, depending upon where it is, which is about the 15-year average when you factor out all the anomalies of it. But in 2008, they were paying $300 a ton so they could stockpile it because they had to shut down all their manufacturing so you could see the stadium that they built. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to see it. So that affected the market tremendously. And one of the real selling points was there was no transportation costs because the container's going back anyway, not a problem. But when it did get there, under green fence, they started inspecting it. And they call this their Earth Goddess inspection system. So all of those containers you saw on the ship, they would open up the first container and they would look and say, that was supposed to be paper or that was supposed to be plastic, and actually we're taking apart a garbage bag of garbage. Close up the container and then ship all of the containers in that lot back. Typically, a broker who's brokering material over, the container shipment, $10,000 a piece. 20 containers in a load, $200,000. And when it gets back to Long Beach, it's stamped rejected by China. You know, anybody wants to buy anything that says rejected by China on it? I don't. So that was the first indication that there was going to be a problem. I started in 2013. And it hit right about at the same time that we saw a real increase in pricing in recycling markets, and that was fine. But if you fast forward to 16 and 17, all of a sudden you've got this plastic China. And it was a short video, but it was basically following a family that lived on a pile of plastic in China. And the urban legend goes, I haven't been able to confirm it, but the urban legend goes that the president of China, Xi Jinping, saw that and he was embarrassed, and he took it to heart. And so when he went to his conference to get elected as president for life, he had 89 mentions of the environment, but just 70 of the economy. Typically, when you hear any PR out of China prior to this point, they've been flipped. It's all about the GDP in China. We got 13.5% GDP. Now, you don't really, but those are the numbers you're feeding us. But it was still much higher than everybody else. Their manufacturing was booming, their middle class was expanding. They were going crazy. They were doing better. They weren't doing 13 better, but that was what they were selling. But this is what he was doing. And he adopted this as his platform, that the environment was more important than the economy. There was a major sea change that took place in that. I don't know how that went that way. Where am I? I hit a button the wrong way. Tim, you got any suggestions?
Probably hit escape and restart the slideshow.
Oh, you got it back.
There you go.
Look at that. Okay, thank you. So the scrap ban that they notified World Trade Organization July 18 of 17, 4 classes, 24 kinds of scrap, all plastics, all unsorted mixed paper, all textiles, some glass, one of my favorites, and metals. They didn't ban cardboard because they love our cardboard, because our cardboard has longer members to it, so it makes their cardboard, when they reprocess it, a little bit stronger. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But in any event, they also seized 85,000 tons of material in a sword raid, and they published that. And if I don't know the Chinese culture well, but I know they're all about saving face. And this is not good if you're seeing your company televised, if you will. But part of this, and the reason I've highlighted this part we're going to get to, is 60% of their groundwater is unfit for human consumption. Remember, they've got a large population, and 60% of the water you can't drink. That's a problem. 19 or almost 20% of the land is contaminated with heavy metals. Can't be used for farming. You've got to feed those people. This isn't going to work. In only 84 out of 338 of the cities can you actually go outside without having your kids wear masks. And a lot of this was caused by the fact that you had over 100 million new cars on the road in the last 10 years. The middle class exploded. When you got a GDP of 13%, if you really had one that, yeah, you're going to get this kind of results. But this is the one he's worried about right here. And we've seen this over and over again in different articles subsequent to that. Rising social pressure, pollution-related social incidents are leading cause of social instability. He's afraid that massive population is going to revolt. And it won't matter that he's the president of China for life. He's got a problem when you have that many people going into the streets. Sooner or later, if your kids are forced, if you're sitting there as a parent, you don't want to send your kids outside. You can't get any water, what are you going to do? You're going to try and move. So there's major underpinning here, and it's this that's causing the problem, is what I personally believe. This is their plastic recycling that we were sending over there. Sorry, you can't see over here. Their lead glass recycling program. even fewer masks on anybody here. Forget the masks, you're dealing with CRT cathode ray tubes. No way that lead should be doing that. You should have anybody near that material. So within China, you had this going on from about 2011 to 13, 14, and 15. They had to do something. And it coincided with all the other stuff, so it kind of got shoved to the back of the news bureau. When he got president for life, and he's talking about the environment and not the economy of China, that's where he's staking his legacy on. So now we're going to try and talk, what was the impact? So China's over here, that doesn't really affect us. It affects the rest of the world because they're taking about 30% of all recyclables exported outside the US are going to Hong Kong, and China accounting for 70% of those. But on the international scale, they're 51% of all plastic scrap in the world they were recycling. 55% of all the recovered paper and fibers, and then over here, the copper scrap, about 55% for the world's economy. It wasn't just our material that they were putting the squeeze on when they did this, it was their own. And because of their economy piece, they were trying to grow their own domestic recycling. This stayed about flat. And sooner or later, the red bars are going to blow away the blue ones altogether. They're going to take care of their own environment. They're going to put their people to work on their own material. Just so you know that they didn't just pick on us. This is the EU. They typically have 874 kilotons a year. In 1 year's time, that was cut in half. So you've got systems that are set up to ship this material to China because they're taking it and they're paying the best price. So everything gets geared up to that. It's like all the rest of the world is shipping everything to China. And then China says, we're going to take half this year, and we're going to get less after that. So while China's putting the squeeze on the international marketplace, the other thing that's happening is we're doing more and more plastic. I look around the room and you see all the plastic water bottles. When the water's out of those bottles, they can barely stand up on their own because the plastics industry has gone to light weighting. So your yogurt cups, any of these here that you see that would typically be in either in a dense plastic or it would be in glass or it would be in some other kind of material, everything is going to light weighting. Why? Because they can ship more of it in those trucks if it doesn't weigh as much. I think one study they did on just yogurt cups, 5.1 ounce yogurt cups for Walmart, accounted for something like 200 trailer trucks a year that didn't have to weigh. You just multiply that by every product on the shelf, that's a huge amount of transportation that doesn't take place. But we're exporting plastic. As soon as we're done drinking all these, we're going to put them somewhere. They used to be going to China. Now they're going to have to stay here because China's not taking them. The largest plastic exporter is the United States from 2011 to 15. Pretty solid at 2 million tons a year that we're shipping off-site. A lot of people that determined that recycling is dead or soon to die. I keep telling them I'm still here. But there have been many articles in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, John Turney back in October 15. And part of the problem, not all of the problem, but part of the problem is the system that we set up to collect all that material that we were sending all to one place. Put it all in one bin. If you think it can be recycled, we'll take care of it, and we'll ship whatever we can't take care of over to China, and they'll pay us. So when the link to China breaks and all that material is still there, then what do you do with it? Because your domestic mills aren't set up to handle it, and they can't handle it. The other problem that we saw as more and more material got put into the system, as more and more communities went to that one bin system, we found out that we had more and more contamination. And this is from, I think, Waste Management comment. Contamination can be up to 50% of the incoming load. So if you're running a facility that's bringing in material and you're sorting it, and then you're trying to sell it to China, that's shut down. But if half of what you're bringing in is garbage, you then have to pay to get rid of it. To go to the landfill, to go to the burn plant or someone else, that's an expense to your operation. Half of what I'm getting. Wait a minute, I used to pay for that. No, I've got to charge for it. And all kinds of money have been spent on education and outreach. The state of Rhode Island, I think, spent over $500,000 just trying to convince people, just put the right material in the bin for us. Thank you very much. We can't deal with the other stuff. Just because you've got a lawnmower engine doesn't mean it can be recycled at a single stream plant. That doesn't work. Garden hoses, anything that tangles, grocery bags, any kind of plastic bag at all as of January 1 this year are banned from all the Casella operations because they wrap around the star wheels and that destroys the whole sort that they start with. The other culprit is all glass is full. Glass is getting into the mix. So if you go to the end of your drive and you put all your recyclables in one bucket, you've got 2 bottles of glass, they could chip, but they certainly can chip when they go in the packer truck. They certainly chip when the next load goes in the packer truck and the next load and the next load. And by the time you get it to the collection point and you dump it on the floor, it's with everything else. That floor is usually concrete. Chip, 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 chip. Then you put it in a 100-yard trailer and take it down to Charlestown and you try and sort out the paper and the aluminum and the plastic and not have pieces of glass in there. It's not physically possible. And they've tried to put all kinds of not shredders, but sorters and separators at the front of the line to get the glass out, but by the time the glass gets there, it's already broken. So, Waste Management, and I'm not picking on Waste Management, they happen to be in the city of Houston, that's their base of operations, their main headquarters. They did a rebid on the Houston curbside, and they said, we're gonna give you a heck of a deal on that, but we're not taking glass. Because if you give us glass, you basically ruined what we've got to put in there, we're gonna have to charge you for it. So that was the first indication that there was something wrong with the system, especially in terms of glass. And this is my buddy, Mr. Tierney, saying that the reign of recycling is over, recycling is going to die. Basically what they're saying is that we're losing money on it. It wasn't that recycling is a bad thing to do. How many here would think of yourselves as lifelong recyclers? Raise your hands. I want to see everybody's. Good, okay. You don't have to go out and hug a tree or anything else, just it's the right thing to do. But it doesn't make money. So when it doesn't make money, Mr. CEO here of Waste Management says, we're not going to keep investing in that. They used to invest $200 million a year in recycling infrastructure, and they stopped. They went to zero. Just like China went to zero in what they were taking, they went to zero in what they were investing because they were losing their shirt on it. And unfortunately, that's continued. Part of it was because of paper. From 2000 to 2014, 15 million tons down to 5. British Vancouver estimates that in another 5 years there won't be a newspaper in the entire province. You look at a USA Today recently, it's like 4 pages. I remember I got the first one when it came out. I was in a campground in Pennsylvania. I said, how did they get the paper here and have the Red Sox score on the front page? How did they do that? But it was about 16 pages and it was lots of gone. That's a value. This is a positive material. You want more positive material, less negative material, less contamination. So when China says it's not going to take mixed paper anymore, this is what you end up with. This happens to be a lot down in Massachusetts. I think this is Ben Harvey, and he had over 6,000 tons stockpiled because he had no place to send it. The China market is closed to mixed paper. The domestic markets have more mixed paper than they can handle because everything was going to China. Larger is better. And that convinced everybody that we want to put it all in one place and take it to one place and put everything in the one bin, which was fine. This is the cleanest operation you've ever seen because I think it's before it starts up. But you can see how many different sort pieces there have to be. Typically in a facility like this, there'd be close to 75 people working to sort it by hand, as well as the optical sorters, the air currents, and that type of thing. So while China was doing what it was doing on that side, the single stream folks were building more and more single stream processing. More material, more material. A lot of the contracts that were given at that time, you actually got paid $25 a ton. So the more you could get to them, the better, until it flipped. Because while the building was going up, the value was going down. And this was over a longer period of time. I think that gets back to 11. 11 was the high point. You're talking over $250 a ton that you could get paid for that material when it came out the back end from China. So every ton that you came in and you sold out the back, regardless of what it was, averaged $250 a ton. In a situation like that, they were happy to take their processing fee off the top and split the difference. Everybody had a winner, as long as China was paying the bill. But it started to go back and go south in 15, you had a little bump, and then it started to go again here. This is what happened after it. This is April 11, this is back in 16, I think, in 17, and then it died, absolutely died here. So each one of these facilities is losing money on every ton that they pick up, every ton that they transport back to the facility, and every ton that they try and process. They're underwater. Not literally, but economically. What happens next, that's my friend Ben, who had the other papers as well. This is what it looks like when it's not so pretty. He's hoping this doesn't get rained on so he can process it back through again, and it costs him about $100 every time he puts a ton through there. He's got to process it again, so maybe he can sell it. If he can get it clean enough, if he can get enough of the glass and the plastic and everything else. So while all these large facilities are operating with more and more volume, losing more and more money, they came up with new ways to assign the risk. We can't make any money on this. We're Waste Management, we're Harvey, we're Casella, wherever. We can't make any money unless we go back to you as our customer and say, you know what, things have changed, and that deal that we gave you for 5 years is coming up due, and by the way, this year, you're going to pay us $125 a ton. I've got to cover my $100 processing fee. I've got to cover the fact that I have to throw 50% of it away. I'm in the hole about $180 a ton. So they figured out a way to assign the risk. They basically transferred it over to the customers. And it was about the end of 17, when cardboard dropped $70 in 1 ton, not because of China, but because of the markets itself. Everybody was full. But it was around that time that people started hearing, wait a minute, we've got to pay for this? Recycling's supposed to be free. Because the recycling had always generated enough revenue to cover the costs for the residuals that did have to be thrown away. But this is a good idea of how the impact, this is plastic scrap. We were shipping 75,000 tons a month to China. Well, by the time we got done in December, we were down to 5,000 tons. The question is, where'd the other 70,000 tons go?
Ocean.
Maybe, but it's either here or in the ocean for sure, and we're going to get the ocean on that. But the markets, the domestic capacity, there wasn't any place to take it. So the plumbing is plugged up. This is not my friend Ben Harvey, but this is out in LA as well. And you've got piles and piles of this plastic waiting to get on a ship. And it just can't move. When China did their ban, the first thing everybody did to scramble is said, well, let's find another market. If China won't take it, we'll take it to Thailand. We'll take it to India. We'll take it to Vietnam. All of these together don't amount to a drop in the ocean, I think I heard before, in terms of capacity. They couldn't even come close to the volume that we had been shipping to China. So we have enough of crisis news. That's the good stuff. What are we going to do with it? What are we going to do about it? And the number of national organizations that looked at this, starting with the ISRI folks here, they sent teams over to China right after that call where all 500 were on, and they said, how can we help you build your infrastructure quicker so you can start taking the material again? China said, no thank you, we're fine. So then they went off to Thailand, and they said, okay, well, maybe we can send it all here. And then they realized when they did the math, there's no way. And you see examples in both Thailand and in the Philippines. There are islands that are currently being shut down. There's one specific one in the Philippines. It's the Wedding Island. They're shut down because there's so much plastic in the bay or on the beach, and they can't clean it up quickly enough that the people were stopped going there. Commerce, money, follow the dollar. And when you have that type of situation, they did the same thing in Thailand with the stretch of beach my son went to visit about a year ago. And he said, we were the last visitors there. And every place you went, there was plastic bags all over the place. plastic. This shows you, this is just a typical snapshot, when you get down to dollars, $6.5 billion. I don't know if those of you know it, but $5.7 billion is a favorite number that's being thrown around right now. I've got $6.5 billion that I could pay that bill with if I didn't just throw it in the ground. This is material that's being thrown in a landfill. And the economics of that, we've got to be able to make work. So while the recycling industry is imploding and everybody's running around with a hair on fire and it's not going to work, it's not going to work, it's working just fine. However, at the same time that that's happening, we have a small problem called MSW. What's MSW? Municipal solid waste, trash. It's all that residual, it's all that 50% that was contaminated, it's the pizza box they leave the piece of pizza in, it's the peanut butter jar they leave the peanut butter in, it's the stuff that's, it's trash. Our neighbors to the south, is anybody here from Massachusetts? Oh, good. Our neighbors to the south have decided to make the problem even worse because they've just shut down 2 major landfills in Massachusetts, Chicopee Falls and Southbridge. The 2 of them combined take in almost 1 million tons of trash a year. That's a relatively big number of black plastic bags with trash in them. So the question becomes, okay, where is that going to go? Right now, one of the facilities down in Massachusetts is bagging that trash and they're shipping it to Virginia. And when Virginia gets full, it's going to go to Pennsylvania, where a lot of New York stuff goes. When that gets full, it's going to go to Ohio and meet up with Mount Rumpke, which is the highest point in Ohio, which happens to be a trash dump. And sooner or later, Ohio is going to figure out, hey, everybody's coming to us. Let's raise the price. We're not going to have a home for it. These are the current 16, 17, 18 almost. We're pushing $80 a ton for spot market, not contracted, but spot market MSW or trash numbers. Some of you have contracts, and I would encourage you to pull them out now and look at them now before they terminate, because you're going to be in shock when they do. We just, for a non-contracted rate, I think we just saw increase of $8 per ton. Any of these slides I can get to Tim for too. So the Northeast has always been the highest. Why? We don't have a lot of room. I can get you a tipping fee. Instead of $80 a ton, if you send me all your trash, I can tip it for $5 a ton. It's Waco, Texas, but I can do it. I just got to get the truck to take it down there. But that's not unreasonable, especially when Ohio figures out they can start raising their rates. What's going to happen, though, is because of the increase in the contamination rates on the single stream especially, some of you may have seen, I think Hooksett, Laconia, and Franklin are all taking all of their curbside single stream directly to the burn plant or to a landfill. Because they got caught, they had budgeted $35 a ton, most of them, and when the China piece hit in that September of 17, it went from 35 to 70 for about a week. Then it went to 95, and I think I just saw a number of like 140 for single stream. I've got contracted trash at 70. I've got recycling at 140. I've got a budget of 35. I ran out of money in the first quarter. Now what do I do? My only hope is that I can take it there and they'll keep accepting it, and hopefully recycling is going to come back. Because if the pricing of the recycling comes back, then the 140 recycling rate will drop back down. It's never going to get back to the 70. But while that's happening, and while more and more towns are going to that, or if they're throwing the glass in the trash, the landfills are going to fill up. Or if Massachusetts happens to come to New Hampshire, New Hampshire deposits about 1,050,000 tons of trash in its landfills in New Hampshire every year. New Hampshire trash, New Hampshire landfill. We also deposit 1,080,000 tons of trash from outside the state. So we're going to run out of space, or we're going to create a few more white mountains.
Ski hills.
Ski hills, there you go, rope tows, whatever. But either way, it's going to cost money. Because as the capacity diminishes, the price can go up. So some good news. When you're given lemons, make lemonade. If you have a crisis, and this has nothing to do with what's going on today, but this crisis is composed of two characters in the Chinese. One is danger and the other is opportunity. The danger is we don't do anything at all. It's like your DOT presentation. Sooner or later, those roads aren't going to be there if we keep going down that way. So the danger is we don't do anything. The opportunity is we say, wait a minute. Either it's important to recycle or it isn't. And I think the economics of it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me to throw away $7 billion a year. I haven't got that to throw away. Let's figure out how to make that work. That's the opportunity. And the encouraging part is that there are a lot of people working on that haven't given up. They're going to keep fighting for it. All the folks that I'm pleased and honored to work with at our place, every day, load by load. Where can we get that cardboard to move to? Where can we get the plastic? How can we get the best price for the member? Can we pick up 2 stops and deliver to 2 different places? And talk about complicated. While all that was going on, to add to the mix, 30,000 truckers are retiring. We move everything by truck. New England has 3 days of food on its grocery shelves. How does it get there? It's by train, it's by truck. Everything has gotten harder and harder and more expensive to move. But how did we get here? This one absolutely slayed, and I was looking at this. August 1st, 1955. Anybody remember? Never mind. August 1st issue of Life magazine offers a 2-page article on throwaway living. Plastic is wonderful. They had a video that went with this. It showed the malware, it's one of those. It's a heart. Thank you, Melvin. There you go. It shows the gal drops the plate on the floor and it doesn't break. Everybody goes out and buys it. What a deal. Works great. Super. We had a few more things that came from back then. Anybody remember the Cuyahoga River?
Oh yeah, lived there.
There you go. We turn in and the river's on fire. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or don't believe in politics at all. Rivers should not be on fire. Supposed to fish in them, go canoeing, go swimming. They're not supposed to be on fire. This is 1968. This was the second time it was on fire. The first time earlier it caused more damage, but we didn't have national television and Walter Cronkite. So this one hits in 68, and the next day they formed the EPA. And today, I believe the Cuyahoga River has been cleaned up. It's certainly not on fire. And I think most people can still agree to that. My buddy, Native American from Sicily. But everybody remembers that ad for the Crying Indian, and that's why we started a litter campaign. A defining moment in the recycling industry, just like the China sword is. Anybody remember the barge? Mobius barge, right? Around the world in 60,000 tons or less. This thing sailed, and every night you tune in, where is it tonight? North Carolina. Oh, no, North Carolina's not going to take it. They saw a bedpan on the side exposed, and they said, that's medical waste, we can't take that. They could have taken it if it was just trash. But because of that, it headed to Louisiana, then it went to Belize, then it went back to North Carolina. It ended up docking at the same dock it left. And the judge finally said, and by the time it had done all this, they'd gotten the permit to expand the landfill that was closed before so they could take it back, but the judge made them burn it first. But everybody remembers that. Our little symbol, if it's got this on it, it can be recycled. Yes, that's absolutely true. But there may not be a market anywhere for it. It may be technically, chemically, physically able to do that. You may be able to do that, but it might cost you $3,000 a pound to make that happen, and nobody's in that business. So this is no guarantee of it will be recycled. It's just telling you that it can be.
By some means.
Which may hurt the environment. You don't know. You got to do all the carbon footprint back and forth. It's crazy. So what are we supposed to do? Clean up your recycling stream. Each and every one of you looks in your garage, you got either 1 bucket or you got 5 buckets. You do, some of the transfer stations I've been to, it's easy. You take 1 bucket and you just deal the cards. Plastic goes here, glass goes there, aluminum goes there. Piece of cake. You do all that labor that the folks, the 75 people were doing in the single stream plant, but you don't have broken glass to deal with. You don't have contaminated material to deal with because it's only been in the one deal. What are the MRF operators doing? They're trying to clean it up. They're trying to add more workers. They're adding more sorters. They're adding more cost to the process that they then have to pass on to everybody else, because until the markets recover, there's nothing going to happen to change that dynamic. So it's time to change the thinking that China is going to go back. There's no way they're going back at all. I think their economy is even in worse shape than they thought. But even from that, we've anticipated that they may change their cardboard thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. The messaging has to be recycling isn't free. It never really was. You just didn't see the cost. But it doesn't mean it should be thrown out with the bathwater. And we need to change the metrics so you can really do full cost accounting and know that when you do recycle a ton of something, that means you're not throwing it in the ground. The cost of throwing it in the ground is going to go from $70 to $140 a ton. And if you run the numbers on any one of your towns and you double the rate of your current recycling and get it close to 140, you look at the impact of that on all your other expenditures. And what it's going to do is it's going to squeeze out your ability to fund other purchases. You're going to have to choose between hiring a police officer or a teacher or paying your trash bill. Those numbers aren't going to go away. Phil, market predictions, what's going to happen? We had this up from 2016 and we said beyond that, major unforeseen events. Boy, were we right. That was unforeseen that he was going to do that, and he nailed it. We actually think it's going to get better, and that's why we spend the time like we did this morning with folks at our office going through programs like this. We also publish a monthly price sheet, and this one you can see where my baled OCC with 40,000 tons, you got $70 to $75 is the guide price, if you will. The last ton we sold out of there was $100 a ton, so that would be about $2,000 for a load of cardboard. If you look at aluminum cans at 50 cents a pound, it comes out to $20,000, excuse me, for a load, a full load of material. It takes a long time to collect it if you're challenged in terms of population, but we had one fellow up in Carroll that collected it for 6 years to get his one full load, and he sold it at 94 cents a pound. He almost got $40,000. It still can happen, and it still can be done. We do a lot of work with schools because we think the real hopeful part of this piece is that the school kids are going to say, you know what, we don't want to end up like China where 60% of the water is undrinkable and 20% of the land can't be farmed. Let's get going and start to do something. This one, I try not to take my picture, but this one they insisted. My town of Sunapee actually saved about $40,000. Conversion in terms of not throwing it in the landfill, and also from the recycling. The school kids come up with absolutely fantastic ideas at the conference we do every year for schools. This is our 10th year. And we do think that if you give us a call and we can't get you the right answer, we'll find it and get it to you. We're the best defense you've got against the national sword. But this piece is one I threw in there because this reminds me of what we feel like every day when we go into the broker's room, if you will. I was giving a presentation like this up at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. China slapped a 25% tariff on cardboard. They didn't even have the courtesy to call me so I could change the slide. I don't know what it had nothing to do with the other tariffs. This was strictly the environmental piece. And they've since taken that off, and they've actually increased the amount that they're going to import. The next day we had breaking news, aluminum can markets are down. Then we had, I think, scrap metals are going to collapse. They were collapsing because most of our scrap on the East Coast goes to Turkey and to Egypt, and those markets were being affected adversely by the fact that China was dumping material on the market, so the price was down. So even though it wasn't a delivering problem or anything like that, it affected it all. So by the time I got to Saturday, I stopped answering the phone. But a typical day for us, we move 3 loads of cardboard. We'll have somebody pick up tires, and we'll evacuate Freon appropriately so that the residual can go in scrap metal. And we just spend every day doing the best we can in terms of the environment. This kid, some of you may have seen, he was on 60 Minutes.
Yep.
Named Boylan Slat. We started following him 5 years ago when he was an unknown kid. He just did his first TED Talk. We actually presented the TED Talk at the school piece. And the boom that he designed broke. They towed it out from San Francisco. They had big fanfare. But the 60 Minutes was right before, I think right before it broke, or right around the same time. So they towed it back in. They're going to fix it, and he's going to go back out again. The story goes he was scuba diving with his buddy in Greece, and his buddy was nearsighted like I am. He's pointing out the fish. Woo, 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 look at fish, look at fish. And Boylan said, that's not fish, that's plastic. It's just like all the pictures you see of the plastic that are in the birds, that are in the fish. We've even got plastic in the Marianas Trench, for God's sakes. We've got a baggie floating around 36,000 feet. We need to get our act together, folks. And it's gonna have to happen. If he's raised $300 million in the last 5 years. He's got a contract with Hoover Vacuum, I think, or one of the vacuum people, that once he does get all this crappy plastic out, they're gonna buy it from him to make new vacuums so they can say, we're a green company. Fine. Some people are saying, well, he'll only touch the surface. He won't get into the stuff that's deeper. He won't really attack the fact that we're dumping 1 truckload of plastic a minute into the ocean worldwide. But there's also hope from an older generation. Anybody see the Queen Elizabeth in England banned straws? She banned plastic utensils. Anything that was a one-use plastic, she banned in the royal houses back in February. That didn't amount to anything as far as volume, but McDonald's in August decided to do the same thing in the UK. Now we're talking volume. Now we're talking we're making a difference. We gave the Queen an award. She didn't have time to come get it because somebody was getting married. I don't know. But there was also a 12-year-old in England that we sent an award to, this very same award we gave the Queen, because she had been doing the bicycle to school every day, picking up the garbage, picking up the litter. And some kids started to bully her. And the folks said, what are you going to do? You either step up, or maybe if you walk away, they'll ignore you. So she decided to step up. She's got something like 300,000 followers worldwide now on her page, known as Trash Girl. And she's doing a great job. So we're going to have to face this issue. The economics of it are going to force us to do that. You're going to be looking at budgets in 5 or 10 years, say, yep, now's the time. We've got to figure this out. The state of New Hampshire has to figure it out. We called the governor's office back in November after that first call and said, I think we've got a problem. I think we should at least start looking at it because it's going to hit everybody's individual budget. I think it's going to end up being that as soon as the stream can get cleaned up for the single stream folks, your pricing for single stream is going to go back down, but I don't think it's going to get back down to where it was. I don't think you'll ever see revenue out of that again to offset the hauling costs. And what we've seen in Massachusetts, a number of the companies down there go back to the boards of selectmen with their contract in hand, says, we can't do this anymore. We're losing $180 a ton. I don't have any money to pay my payroll to get the guy to turn on the truck. You got to help us out. So the town's sitting there saying, we either got to help them out, or we're now paying the bill directly or indirectly, either way. And they say, we haven't got that in the budget. We've got a contract. You've got to honor your contract. Force majeure, I can't honor. I don't have the money to honor the contract. And the next person that sits in my seat is going to charge it twice what I'm charging. So it is important that we start to talk about that. The sheet that I started to reference there that you'll see, the recycling can make money if you have storage, if you have enough material, and you can load full loads of material. You can sell it. The only one that's a kicker in that deal right now is mixed paper, which used to be paying $85 a ton a year ago, and now it's charging $65 a ton. And that's about half of the volume of the good stuff. So that was the other piece that really nailed the processors, and there's no way they can make it up. You're certainly not going to make it up on volume. You're going to lose on every single ton. So in some cases, the folks like Harvey are being asked, well, you can't afford to shut it down. He says, I can't afford to run it. I got an 88,000 square foot building. I've got 75 people working there, and every time they turn that thing on, I'm losing money. This is not a good solution. So the economics are going to drive it. I'm convinced it's going to generate more and more people like this. The plastic in the ocean has become that flashpoint, like the Indian and the garbage barge, because people know they can identify with that. They know that there shouldn't be plastic in the ocean, just like the river shouldn't be on fire. So I'm hoping that every day we can talk to somebody and someone's gonna step, I got a bright idea, let's have amoeba eat the plastic. There's a guy that just got an award for doing that. In Norway, they've just started with 1 and 2 plastics are the only kind you can produce. And you have to take back at least 95% of it, or guess what? There's gonna be a big fine that you're not gonna like. They've had it in place for 3 years. It's just on 1 and 2 plastic. They've made 95 every one of the 3 years. So it can happen, but it's not easy. Just like the other presentation, it's not easy getting this thing to work, but there's potential for it to work, and I'm convinced it's gonna happen. So if you would, keep recycling. That's what I got.
So several years ago, I used to do a lot of business in Europe. You'd walk out of their equivalent of a Home Depot, and the bins would be right there.
Oh, yeah.
And the manufacturers were basically imposed to take back their packaging products. And
Been to
you
Vermont
walk-
lately? That's like Europe. Let me tell you about Vermont's e-waste program.
Okay.
We got time, I can't see the, oh, 8 o'clock. Cut me off whenever, we're good for another 2 hours. So Vermont, everyone wants to go. In Vermont, back about 2009, they passed a law that said if you sell a computer in the state of Vermont, you got to take it back. You got to pay the price of decommissioning that computer based on your Dell. You sell 25% of the computers in the country, you get 25% of the bill. So the state of Vermont went out, they hired us, of all people. We went out and we got 103 sites to agree to take electronics, just like your transfer station. They're already taking them. This wasn't a big lift. So we got them to agree to the program. They get paid 5 cents a pound for every one that they bring in. And the manufacturers pay all the rest of the bill, including that 5 cents, to the state of Vermont, where they can't sell it there. It's the simplest program I've ever seen. And it works slick. The paint care program is the same type of idea, but that people think that's a tax because it's on the front end piece. Everybody in Vermont thought, oh my God, they're going to charge more for an HP or a Dell in Vermont than they do in New Hampshire. You know, we're going to all be running over to New Hampshire to buy our computers. Or, oh my God, all the people in New Hampshire are going to bring their TVs over to us. Yeah, they were lined up at the border. Gas was $4 and something a gallon. They weren't driving from Nashua up to Vermont to get rid of a TV. Not unless they were going skiing, they could throw it back. But that program works absolutely slick. It's been working since 2011. I think the first year we recovered over 4.5 million pounds of electronics. You wouldn't believe some of the stuff that came out of basements. You know, the wood frame things, you know, like, they were sweet. They're down now, everybody's bringing in flat screens, but we still see CRT tubes and everything else. But at least 4.5 million pounds every year is being taken out of the waste stream, properly decompressed and processed by either R2 or an E-Stewards processor certified. It has to spend $30,000 to get inspected before they can even be part of the state program. So it's going to the right place. They're doing the right thing with it. And there's never been a boo from any one of the Toshibas or the Acers or anybody else. Simple program.
Aren't we looking at the economics of all these materials incorrectly if we're not looking at the cost after that water bottle? You can buy a case of water for $2.
Right.
And then all of the bottles will end up in the stream. Aren't we just looking at the economics of cheap plastics the wrong way?
Well, the we is inclusive.
The whole world, you know, our government here, governments all the way
Oh,
down
yeah.
to the towns.
Again, there's a lot that doesn't want to get in the face of the manufacturers. The manufacturers are trying to keep the cost down as much as they can. That keeps the profit as much as they can. But when you start talking about these types of things and you get that flashpoint that everybody recognizes, besides Boyle and Slad on the 60 Minutes piece, they actually went back out to Midway Island. I don't know if any of you have seen that little piece. That's discouraging. I mean, that stuff is just killing birds out there like crazy. What do you think it's doing to the fish? By the 2050, there's going to be more plastic than fish in the ocean. That's one of those river things. What?
Yeah.
That's not going to be good for us. I mean, we may never eat another swordfish again. That's not going to kill us probably. But maybe if we keep eating them, it might. And it's not good for the swordfish. Come on, guys. The earth is going to be just fine if this piece of the puzzle disappears. And we stop doing this. We can't keep dumping the plastic like we're doing in the ocean. That doesn't make sense. And that gets to, we shouldn't just look at plastic, we should look at every part of the waste stream. When you look at the fact that all of your bills for MSW are based on weight, what do you want to take out of that before you send it off and get charged? You want to take out glass. And if you can take out the glass, you can crush the glass. The DOT could save all kinds of money. I got piles of glass waiting for you guys to take that glass back and reuse it. But then you've got to take out the food waste. That's your next biggest weight compartment. You could get your trash bill cut in half if you can get rid of those two pieces of waste. But you're right, we've got to look at how we engineer things so that we don't end up with something that you can't do anything with. I've got a gal coming from the University of Georgia to our conference in May. I'm excited about her because she's a young person who's an engineer, and she's figured out how to tell you if you pick up that water bottle in New York City or North Carolina, where's the nearest place you can recycle? So little things like that that can get the stuff into the flow. There were two guys down in Haiti that found out that you know what happens the first time you get a hurricane? We ship them water. Plastic, they got more plastics than you can shake a stick at. It's all in the ditchways, which are also their, effluent. So these two guys went down. They got all the people organized to pick that stuff up. There's another gal doing it out in the Philippines and Taiwan on the beaches, French gal, and she's going to hire people to pick up all the plastic on the beach. They're going to shred it there. They're going to ship it back to France or to England to be remanufactured into new plastic. But the key is, how can we do that easily so it doesn't cost a lot of money? How do we plan for decommissioning of that material?
I think it went back on the industry that's creating it. They'd say, well, geez, maybe I can't sell this bottle for a penny. Did it really cost 5 cents? Because I've got to pay for all this recycling and transportation to get everything around the world. And maybe you don't buy water in bottles anymore.
Maybe you don't bottle.
The economics is just driving what we'll continue to do. As long as they make a profit, they'll keep doing it.
I got something to share with you. Take these inexpensive bottles of water that you have, okay? Leave them in the garage for 6 to 8 months, and then go back and take a look at the bottle. Oh my gosh, it shrunk. How'd that happen?
Yeah.
Because the water came out. Well, water can go out pretty easy. Guess what else happens? Things can go back in. And you stored it in your garage. And what other kinds of chemicals and harmful compounds do you have out there? And now you're going to drink it.
A little bit ago, one of the Monster drinks, they came out with a new plastic cylinder and had an aluminum pop top. The aluminum people didn't want it back, and the plastic people didn't want it back. Why the hell are you making this stuff like this? This is nuts. They finally discontinued it. But the industries are coming to the table a little bit. They realize how much that resonates when you see that there's going to be more plastic than fish. That's not good. So Subaru is a zero landfill manufacturer. Coca-Cola has put millions of dollars into recycling bins for schools and that type of thing to support recycling efforts. Because they want to be green companies. They want to be looked at as green companies. But when you take the hammer to them in Vermont and say, you want to sell a computer? Sign right here. Every one of them signed up.
A couple of anecdotes. I don't have a flak jacket on. I was a manufacturer of plastic bags.
Yeah, survive that one.
So you're a reformed plastic man.
I kept with my hand up and said, put it outside.
Oh, come on.
Remember Mr. Waste in 1987? Mr. Waste in California?
I don't.
This is very cool for you. Mr. Waste dug a hole in one of our landfills in California to try to prove to people that landfills really don't work. A banana, just thrown away, this is 250 feet down. A hot dog, looked like it just taken right out of it in a vapor. As if they were just thrown away, 250 feet down. Solid rock. Hanford, in their own backyard, remanufactured 350 to 450 million bags for them every year. We got them to recycle their own product. The stores, individual stores, would palletize the bags, send them up to the distribution center in Portland. Portland would send it up to us in St. John, and put that plastic back into the bag. When you're talking about plastic bags and cost, I would not manufacture the bags they're too cheap, too thin, and somebody's gonna cut our legs off just because we want the business, we're gonna buy the business. We manufacture a product that gets this out of the store, to your car, to your house. They dictate to us, but they're going to pay. I don't know, I like Sandman. We're only gonna pay this, but I don't give a shit what the costs are. So we did the best we could with what we had.
It's back to design, when the price of gas now is what, $2.19 or $2.20, I saw the other day. If the price of fuel goes down, the value of that plastic bottle goes up. Because when you've got the higher cost of oil, they can't, we can compete with it. When it goes down, then we've got a better play for it. They use the plastic. We just have to remember it's not the graduate anymore. It's plastic. Well, we did that. We saw the graph. The plastic went through the roof. We just didn't take into account the impact it was going to have. But we're going to be forced to do that. When people talk about the states around us, like Vermont and Massachusetts currently, and even Maine, they're all looking at very active anaerobic digestion programs, a lot of composting. The whole point of Act 148 in Vermont was that composting was going to reduce the volume of trash in the state. They only have one landfill in Coventry, up on the Canadian border, so anything in Vermont that is going to be buried in Vermont has to go up there, so you got the trucking cost for that that's going through the roof. It's just killing them.
What about supermarkets in the state? You know, some supermarkets still give out plastic bags. Are they going to do some kind of discontinue or some kind of change?
I don't know what they are going to do. I do know they're taking them back, which at least you know where you can get that one bag. But it diffuses we don't look at it holistically and say, here's our waste stream. How do we deal with all of this? And how would we deal with that universally between here and California? My God, every town you go into has a different single stream. We'll take this, we won't take that. It's confusing as all get out. It's not fair to blame the consumer. They're trying to do the right thing. I've yet to meet anybody or any group of people that didn't want to recycle it right. It's the right thing to do. How do we address the concerns of the manufacturers? Because they've got to save money. Okay, save money, but you're going to get 2 credits because you did it right.
You know, we didn't throw those bags in the ocean.
Yeah.
The guy was on the boat.
Through a boat. Well, I gotta tell you, that's the perfect segue for the last story I give you. My mother was on a Carnival cruise line, and after my dad passed away, she would go on a cruise every once in a while because she loved to do that. We grew up on Cape Cod. Just loved being on the ocean. So she's sitting in the back of the ship. Boom, bag of trash. Boom, bag of trash. That was their policy. They dumped the trash off the boat when they were out of port. Why? Because there wasn't a lot of room on the island to dump it when they were in port. So that night, she went down to the captain's table and said, "You're going to stop doing that. That's the wrong thing to do." The next day in the Miami Herald, Carnival Cruise Line stops all dumping of garbage. My mother single-handedly. Go Mom. Mom was great. She has nothing to do with it at all. But it helps.
I think you've got.
Oh, question. Sorry. Yes, sir.
What's the downside if you incinerate all the trash? That yeah, you generate power.
Yeah. Most of Europe is bartering back and forth because they're burning trash. So they're running out of trash to burn because they also have a huge composting program going on because they don't have a lot of land. But they're actually trading. Sweden is trading to Germany, back to Norway with the amount of incineration that they have. But sooner or later, that's going to catch up with us. That's a stopgap. It doesn't take into account the fact that we need to create. We've got a limited amount of resources. as President Macron, I think, said, there is no planet B anywhere. So we have so much rare earth, and we have so much of this, we have so much of that. So if we decide to bury everything in the landfills, we're going to be back there mining the because we're going to run out of it. Along with all the plastic in the ocean by 2050, we're going to have 9 billion people. We're going to need a lot of stuff. So the more we can remake out of the stuff we've already dug out of the ground, the better, which is why the glass needs to get reused by the highway department. So you take the glass, you grind it up, and you put it right back in the ground. That's where it came from, that's where it goes back, and it actually has frost-resistant capacity, so it's even better. Yes, ma'am.
I know you're here to talk about recycling, but I also want to just say there's 2 other R's, reduce and reuse.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's another way to solve a lot of this problem is to reduce and reuse.
That gets to when you're producing it, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're the last line of defense. I was trying to ignore it, but yeah, absolutely. Well, wait a minute, this is yes.
Who can enter the legislation into New Hampshire to do things like what Vermont's doing?
I sent a copy of the Vermont regulations today to the town of Loudon Select Board because they requested it. We're not allowed to lobby. It's in our charter as a nonprofit, but any one of you, maybe a select person or whatever, may know of it, legislator. There is a bill, I think, being introduced to study recycling in New Hampshire. I'm sure that.
That could go on for 10 years.
Well, I'm trying to tell people we're running out of time here,
I know
folks.
our select people are here, so I know
Yep.
my dad's looking.
The more you can get in there, even if they just study it the first year, they're going to come to the same conclusion. They've got to get started. We can't afford to just get distracted by all the things that happen in our lives. This is going to have a big impact.
And the second part is how do we get the glass to the DOT if we can collect it?
I've had 3 meetings with them this fall trying to convince them that I'm ready to go and there's no cost.
Can we just drop off bins?
Bins of glass? No.
Seriously.
No, the closest right now, the closest host site is Waste Management because they need it for their expansion that they're doing on Turnkey. So they've acted, they're acting as a host site. They're going to take it in. We're going to send a mobile crusher there to crush it, and then they'll be using it in their pipe bedding that they need for the construction because it does percolate so quickly that you don't have any frosties at all in there. The same with Dennis on the Cape. They're going to. I just got a call from them today, and they're starting their program in March. So they're going to collect glass from all the other towns on the Cape. We'll go to Dennis. We'll send the mobile crusher in probably in April before the traffic gets in there. And then they're going to use it in all their sewer projects because they've got a ton of it. So it's a perfect application. And we just need to find more uses for it. We haven't been able to get the economics of getting it from the pile once we crush it to wherever the DOT project is. Exit 12 on 89 was 4 miles away from a pile of crushed glass, but no one knew the pile of crushed glass was there. So Richard Lee had a heart attack because he's the road agent in New London. Said that would have been the perfect application. He ended up selling it to Colby Sawyer for underneath the parking lot. So he made a little bit more money on it than giving it to DOT in that case. But we're just trying to convince them that when you have a project, just call us and we'll find the glass to do that. We've got about 10,000 tons that we collect every year and process. We also have a contract we just entered into with a company in Canada that's taking plain glass, no porcelain, no ceramics, no Pyrex dishes, and they're making new glass and Johns Mansfield insulation out of it. So it is being repurposed or reused, if you will. And the economics of that, how do you get it to Canada for a price that you can afford? But it's still all less than trash. Yes, sir.
You know, why couldn't you take the action under the asphalt on the road?
Good. There's no reason you couldn't. There's a county out in Illinois, I believe, that stopped taking federal funds because they wouldn't approve the use not of ash but of glass aggregate underneath in the roadbed. But they did the studies that underneath the roadbed, not in the asphalt itself, but as the road base on subbase. And because of that, because you didn't get the heaving with it, it was actually they saved money as opposed to taking the federal money, because the federal money they had to resurface so many times.
Send the ash out to space.
That might not be a cost effective one.
Any one last question we did, because Mike lives out near Vermont, which is Sunapee, so I want
Yeah.
to let him get that.
No, no.
Well, I think we want to thank.
Thank you.
Mike,
Can we use glass for septic leach fields?
Unfortunately, no.
Because of legislation.
No, it percolates too fast. We had Presby Environmental up in Whitefield tested it for us. And it's really good at getting water through the pile. You put a pile out in the parking lot, and you put a pile of bank run gravel next to it, and you get a January freezing rain deal, the pile of glass is fine, the other one's a block. But there has to be a certain retention rate so it didn't do that, it let it go too quickly. Works great, you know. But we're trying to think of that. We're also trying to find another alternative for mixed paper so we can make it into pellets either for wood stoves or for animal bedding or even into compost directly. Because mixed paper is the one that's costing so much right now. So if we can develop a system that can do that, we've got a great UNH student working on it. She's going to make it a graduation and capstone project. Anytime you get any questions, feel free. There is a timeline on the China Sword piece on our website as well. It's right on the front page. There's also a short 8-minute video with Richard Lee about glass. If you ever want to convince any of your highway department people, as a town, you can use it as 100%. The DOT rate for DOT projects would be at 20% mix. But at town, you have the authority to use it at 100%. So you can crush your own glass and use it. We can crush it. The other towns can bring it in. They can use it, and it works out really well. Thank you all again. Appreciate you coming out.